"You disappointed me" were the only words my grandfather left me. His recordings revealed my family's conspiracy and destroyed them all. I used to believe my family was just complicated in the normal way. You know how it is, those Christmas dramas where someone always cries in the bathroom, passive-aggressive comments about who brought store-bought dessert instead of homemade, that aunt who drinks too much wine and starts telling secrets no one asked to hear. But there was still love there, or at least that's what I convinced myself of for 29 years of my life. My name is Sophia, I'm 32 years old now, and I'm finally ready to talk about what really happened on the day of my grandfather's will reading. The day my entire reality crumbled like a castle of wet cards, and I finally saw who these people really were behind the forced smiles and family photos. Grandpa Enrique was the patriarch. Not just in the literal sense of the word, he was the axis that kept us all spinning in the same orbit, even when we wanted to escape. All the important holidays happened at his farm, 3 hours from the capital. All arguments were mediated by his deep, firm voice. All of us, from my lawyer aunt who was already on her third marriage to my cousin Bruno who still lived in the guest room of the house, treated him like some kind of sacred figure. He had raised 4 children alone after my grandmother died young, survived cancer and the bankruptcy of his first company. And through all of that, he always remembered my birthday. Not with expensive gifts, but with handwritten cards, always in the same firm, slanted handwriting, always with a special message just for me. So when he passed away, I was certain, absolutely certain, that I would be remembered somehow. My mother, his middle daughter, used to call me Daddy's little girl, even when I was already in college. We used to sit together on the farm's porch, drinking coffee while everyone else was still sleeping, and he would tell me real, raw stories about what it was like to build everything from scratch, about the mistakes he made, about the love letter he wrote to my grandmother but never had the courage to deliver before she agreed to marry him. I thought he shared these things with me because I was the only one who truly listened. Turns out maybe I was just the only one available in those moments. Or maybe, and this hurts to admit, I was never as special as I thought. When he died, I was one of the few who didn't break down publicly. Don't get me wrong, I was destroyed, had a hole in my chest that seemed to suck all the air from my lungs, but I held it together. At the funeral, my cousins cried into embroidered handkerchiefs, my aunts hugged each other dramatically, and my uncle gave a strange, disconnected speech about legacies and inheritance taxes that made everyone frown. I sat in the back of the chapel alone, holding the last letter he sent me. "We'll talk soon, Sophia. I have something important to tell you." That was 2 weeks before he died. I never found out what he wanted to say. The will reading happened a month and a half later, in a conference room that smelled of old furniture and expectations. The lawyer, Dr. Campos, was a man who had known our family for decades. He had that overly formal way about him, using words like clauses and beneficiaries as if he were reading Shakespeare. My mother sat beside me, her hand occasionally squeezing mine, as if she could already feel the weight of the inheritance she thought was coming. They all thought so, actually. You could see it in their eyes, shining like crows circling something dead on the road. My Aunt Veronica had even worn a black blazer, as if being well-dressed would increase her slice of the pie. My cousin Camila was with her fiancé, a real estate broker with a 2-square jaw and calculated smiles, whispering things in her ear as if they were at an auction evaluating the lots. No one really looked at me. I was just another piece on the board, waiting my turn. Dr. Campos began with a long, boring preamble, legal terms here and there, clauses everywhere, and then he began reading the allocations. For my Uncle Fernando, the collection of antique watches he had always coveted. For Aunt Veronica, the farm, obviously. Camila received Grandpa's gold graduation ring, even though she had only shown up at the farm twice in the last 5 years, and always just to post photos on Instagram. My mother received a generous amount in company shares. Even Bruno got the old pickup truck, which was hilarious since he didn't even have a driver's license. And then Dr. Campos paused. He cleared his throat in a way that made my stomach turn. For my granddaughter Sophia, he read, and my heart literally skipped a beat. Everyone turned to look at me for the first time in an hour. My mother gave me a warm, proud smile, as if saying, "See, I told you." Dr. Campos reached for a folder and took out a small, sealed envelope. He instructed that this be delivered directly to you, he said, extending it to me. I took it slowly, feeling the weight of all eyes on me. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, with my name written in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. I hesitated for a moment, then tore open the flap. Inside was a small card, and on it, just 3 words written with a black pen, underlined once. You disappointed me. That's it. Just that. No context. No explanation. No with love or I'm sorry or anything that would make it make sense. Just those 3 words that pierced my chest like ice shards. I blinked, genuinely confused, turning the card from side to side looking for something else. A second page. A clue. Anything. But there was nothing. I looked at the lawyer, then at the room. No one said a word. No one laughed or gasped or offered any kind of explanation. And then someone laughed. Aunt Veronica. It was a short, shrill laugh that she tried to muffle with her hand, but I saw it. My cousin Camila smiled out of the corner of her mouth. Even Bruno muttered something like, "Wow." I felt the blood drain from my face. My mother put her hand on my arm, but I pulled away. I stood up slowly, put the card back in the envelope, and left that room without saying a word. No one followed me. That was the last time I saw any of them. I didn't answer calls. I didn't respond to messages. I missed Christmas, Easter, even my mother's birthday. I moved to another state and started over from scratch. No explanations. Just silence. I figured they didn't deserve more than that. And then, last week, I received a message from Camila. It was short, sharp, and full of entitlement. Are you really not coming to Grandpa's one-year memorial? Everyone will be there. You're being selfish. That single message unearthed everything I had buried. All the confusion, the pain, the shame, the unanswered questions, but mainly the anger. Because now I need to know. Why did he write that? Why did the man I thought loved me leave me with nothing but those poisoned words? And if there's one thing my grandfather taught me, it's that if you want answers in this family, you have to dig with your own hands. So that's exactly what I started doing. And what I've already found may explain everything. And destroy them all in the process. I didn't respond to Camila's message. Not immediately. I stared at my phone screen, my finger hovering over the keyboard while hundreds of responses swirled in my head. Some cutting, some sarcastic, some simply cruel. But in the end, I just locked the screen and threw the phone on the couch. I wasn't ready. Not for her. Not for any of them. But something about that message planted a seed. Because after a whole year of silence, after 12 whole months trying to bury that day in the deepest part of my mind, it took just one presumptuous accusation to bring it all roaring back. I never told anyone what was in that envelope. Not my friends. Not my therapist. I let everyone assume it was something private and emotional. I never showed the words. You disappointed me. I didn't know how. How do you explain that the man who used to wake you up early to watch the sunrise at the farm, who taught you how to make coffee the way he liked it, who kept the drawings you made as a child in a special folder, decided, in his final accounting of life, that you didn't deserve even a decent explanation? But after that message, I started needing to know why. I needed to understand who in that room knew. Because someone knew. Maybe several people. That kind of cruelty doesn't happen in a vacuum. I started slowly. I went back to looking at old photos, old letters. I pulled out all the birthday cards Grandpa had ever sent me. There were 28 of them, kept in a shoebox in the closet, tied with red string. I read them all in order, like chapters in a book. They were sweet, always thoughtful, always loving, until I got to the last ones. The tone didn't change dramatically, but something was missing. They became shorter, less personal. On my 29th birthday, it was just, "Happy birthday, Sophia. I wish it to be a special year. With affection, Grandpa Enrique." That's it. No mention of our morning conversations. No inside jokes. No, "I miss you." At the time I hadn't noticed because I thought, well, people get old. He was tired. But now I saw it for what it was, distance. He was pulling away from me. Or someone was pulling him away. I kept digging. I remembered something from the will reading. How Camila had smiled when I opened the envelope. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition. She knew. So I started there. I created a fake account. Yes, I know it sounds like stalker behavior, but I didn't care anymore. I followed Camila on Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn, just to see what she had posted around the time of Grandpa's death. Buried between wedding dress photos and blessed hashtags, I found a photo she had posted 8 weeks before the funeral. She and her fiancé were at the farm, smiling next to my grandfather, who looked thinner and more tired than I remembered. The caption said, "Special weekend at the farm with our favorite grandpa. Thanks for everything, Grandpa. You're the best." I zoomed in on the photo. In his lap, almost imperceptible, was a manila folder. I don't know if it was the folder, the one from the will, but my instinct told me it mattered. Grandpa was making decisions. And Camila was there, alone with him. The next day, I went to visit my mother. It had been almost a year since we talked. I didn't even warn her I was coming. I just drove back to my hometown, parked in front of her house, and knocked on the door like a stranger. She opened with a muffled scream and instant tears in her eyes. "Sophia," she whispered. My God. She pulled me into a hug before I could say anything. I let her. She smelled the same, lavender mixed with the cheap perfume she'd been using since I could remember. That smell made me feel 12 years old again, and I hated it. When she finally let me go, she was blinking rapidly, trying to compose herself. "I thought I'd never see you again," she said, her voice breaking. "I know," I replied. "Can we talk?" We sat in the kitchen. She made tea, because that's what she does when something big is happening. The table still had the same crack in the corner from when I was 15 and tried to cut a watermelon with a bread knife. The whole house seemed frozen in time, as if nothing had moved in the year I'd been gone. Except me. "I want to ask you something," I said, watching her face carefully. "About Grandpa." Her eyes immediately dropped. "He left you something, didn't he?" I asked. She nodded. "He left me the shares. And the necklace with my grandparents' photo inside." "And were you surprised?" My mother hesitated. "Not really. I knew he was planning to leave most of it to Veronica. You know how he was. Always favored the more showy children. But not me," I said, without beating around the bush. She flinched. "Sophia." I took the envelope from my coat pocket. I had started carrying it again. Like a reminder. A talisman. Proof that I hadn't made this up. "I never told you what he left me," I said, placing the envelope gently on the table. "Open it." My mother looked at it as if it were a bomb. She reached slowly, slid the card out, and read. Her face didn't change. No shock. No confusion. Just a quiet, resigned sadness. "So you knew," I said. "No," she responded quickly. "Not about the card. Not that. But..." She took a deep breath. "I knew he was angry with you." Angry. My voice came out louder than I intended. "Why?" My mother looked at her own hands. "He thought you were lying to him." "Lying about what?" "About work. About money. About who you were dating." "I'm not exactly sure." Veronica and Camila filled his head with a bunch of things. They said you only visited him to secure your share of the inheritance. That you were manipulating him. I felt my jaw lock. "And you let them?" "I didn't believe them," she said too quickly. "But your visits really did become less frequent. You stopped answering his calls for a while." He noticed. "I was working 3 jobs, Mom. I was trying to pay off college debt. You knew that." She nodded slowly. "I told him that. But he became paranoid. You know how he got when he got something in his head." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought it would pass," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to put you against him. I honestly thought there would still be time. That I could fix things before it was too late. But there wasn't time." She shook her head, tears flowing now. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I should have told you. But I was afraid of losing you too." I stood up, not because I was too angry to stay, but because I needed to process. My mother knew something was wrong. And she chose to wait. Wait and hope it would resolve itself. Meanwhile, her sisters had poisoned the well. I left that house feeling colder than when I entered. Because I realized my mother had known. And she did nothing. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to the memorial. Not to make peace. Not to cry. But to confront them. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I didn't respond to the RSVP. I just showed up, dressed in black, with a different envelope in my coat pocket. This time it wasn't his card. It was a copy, and I had plans for it. The memorial was being held at the farm. Of course it was. I hadn't been back there since the funeral. The place looked exactly the same. White gate. White porch. The hammock still hanging between the two trees. There were cars parked on the grass. People standing in small groups with wine glasses. It looked less like a memorial and more like a garden cocktail party. I entered discreetly. No one noticed me at first. I walked down the hallway, entering the living room. And there they were. Camila, Veronica, Uncle Fernando, and some others. All smiles. All warmth. As if nothing had happened. Camila saw me first. Her face fell. Sophia. The conversation stopped. Heads turned. I walked forward calmly and took the envelope from my coat. Nice memorial, I said. Celebrating the man who told me I disappointed him without even telling me why. Very touching. Everyone stared. Some looked uncomfortable. Veronica actually smiled. He had his reasons, she said softly, adjusting her wine glass. Did he? I challenged. Or did you give him the reasons? Camila blinked. What are you talking about? I held up the envelope. This is what I received. While all of you walked away with properties, jewelry, shares, and cars, I got 3 words. I showed it to the room. Some people looked genuinely shocked. Others looked away. And I know, I continued, that someone here knew. That someone was there when he changed his mind about me. Someone whispered in his ear. Someone planted the seeds. Veronica shrugged. Maybe he just realized who you really were. No, I replied, stepping closer. He realized who you wanted him to think I was. Big difference. Camila stepped forward. Sophia, maybe now isn't the time. No, I cut her off. Now is exactly the time. Because I know you were here. I saw the photo. You were here weeks before he changed the will. Alone with him. And I bet Veronica was too. Camila's face turned red. You don't know what you're talking about. I think I do. And that's when I noticed something strange. In the corner of the room, near the fireplace, was Grandpa's old desk. The same one where he used to sit to write letters and do accounts. And on top of it, half hidden behind a picture frame, was a small wooden box. I knew that box. He used to call it his personal archive. He said he kept the things that really mattered there. And suddenly I knew. I felt that whatever I was looking for might be right there. But before I could move toward it, someone spoke behind me, making my blood run cold. You shouldn't have come back. I turned around. It was Uncle Fernando. Arms crossed. Expression unreadable. And by the way all the others suddenly fell silent, I realized something chilling. They all knew. They were all involved in this. I didn't respond immediately. I just looked at Uncle Fernando. This man who used to lift me on his shoulders when I was 5. Who taught me to fish in the farm lake. Who always brought hidden chocolate in his pocket when he came to visit us. And I waited. I waited to see if he would laugh. Blink. Show any sign that he was joking. But he didn't. He just stared at me with that cold, distant expression, as if he were looking through me, not at me. You shouldn't have come back, he repeated. Softer now. As if it weren't a threat. As if it were advice. A truth I should simply accept. But I had swallowed enough silences. I had accepted half-chewed truths for too long. Why? I asked, my voice coming out firmer than I expected. Because you don't want me to find out what really happened. Because you're afraid I'll ruin this comfortable fantasy you've built. Veronica sighed, as if I were a stubborn child throwing a tantrum. Sophia, you're being dramatic. Your grandfather made his own decisions. He was an adult man, perfectly capable. Capable. I let out a bitter laugh. He was 84 years old. He had just come out of pneumonia. He was taking 6 different medications that sometimes left him confused. You know that as well as I do. Camila crossed her arms. That doesn't change the fact that he wrote that. With his own hand. No one forced him. No, I agreed. No one held his hand. But someone filled his head with lies. Someone made him believe I was some gold-digging manipulator who was only close to him because of the money. I looked around the room. Some distant relatives looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight from one foot to another. Others just avoided my gaze. And you know what's funniest? I continued. I never asked him for anything. Never. Not when I had 3 jobs and could barely pay rent. Not when my car broke down and I had to take 2 buses to get to work. I never asked. My voice began to tremble, but I continued. But you? You always asked. Veronica asked to borrow money for the house renovation. Fernando took a loan to invest in that company that went bankrupt. Camila asked him to pay for half the wedding. Camila's face turned red. That was different. He offered. He always offered. I interrupted. Because he loved you. Because he wanted to help. But somehow, when I simply spent time with him, without asking for anything, that became suspicious. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, like a storm cloud hovering over all of us. That's when I realized I wasn't going to get anything from them there. Not with audiences. Not with witnesses. They had built their narratives too well, and in front of other people, they would defend those stories to the death. But that box on the desk, that was still there. And I needed to see what was inside. You know what, I said, backing away slightly. You're right. Maybe I shouldn't have come back. Veronica seemed to relax slightly. Her mistake. But since I'm here, I continued, I think I'll take one last walk around the farm. For the memories. Do you mind? No one answered. Camila opened her mouth as if to protest, but Uncle Fernando put his hand on her arm. A small gesture, but significant. They wanted me to leave. They wanted me to get out of that room and, preferably, out of their lives. Perfect. I left the room calmly, walking down the hallway as if I were just taking a nostalgic tour. I passed by the kitchen, where you could still smell the ghost scent of the cornmeal cakes that Grandpa made on Sundays. I passed by the guest room where I used to sleep during summer vacations. And then I went upstairs. No one followed me. I heard the conversations resume downstairs, low voices mixing with the clinking of glasses and forced laughter. Grandpa's office was on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hallway. The door was ajar. I entered and closed it silently behind me. The room still smelled like him. That mixture of old paper, leather, and the sandalwood soap he always used. I had to stop for a moment, just breathing, feeling the loss of him again, fresh and sharp as if it had happened yesterday. But I didn't have time for mourning now. I went straight to the desk. And there it was. The wooden box, dark and polished, with the initials HM engraved on the lid in faded gold letters. I tried to open it. Locked. Of course it was. I looked around searching for the key. I rummaged through the desk drawers. Nothing. I looked under the pen holder, behind the books on the shelf. And then I remembered. When I was a child, Grandpa used to hide things in obvious places because, according to him, people always look in complicated places. I looked above the door, and there it was. A small gold key hanging on an almost invisible nail. I got the key, went back to the desk, and unlocked the box with trembling hands. Inside were papers. Many papers. Old letters, yellowed photographs, newspaper clippings. But what caught my attention was a black notebook, one of those hardcover ones, with an elastic band keeping the pages closed. I took out the notebook and opened it to the first page. The handwriting was Grandpa's, that slanted, firm handwriting I knew so well. Personal Diary of Enrique Martins. If I'm dead and you're reading this, I hope it's who I think it is. My heart raced. I turned the page. The first entries were old, from years ago. Reflections on business, on family, on difficult decisions he had to make. I started flipping faster, looking for more recent dates. And then I found it. March 15th. 2 years ago. Sophia came to visit me today. She brought coffee the way I like it, and we sat on the porch talking about her life. She seems tired. Working too hard. I worry about her, but I know she's strong. Stronger than anyone in this family gives her credit for. I kept reading, page after page. Entries about our conversations. About how he valued the time we spent together. About how he worried about my future. And then, the entries started to change. August 10th. A year ago. Veronica came today. She said she's worried about Sophia. She said she's been borrowing money from other relatives and not paying it back. I don't know if I believe that. It doesn't sound like her. But Veronica seemed sincere. August 23rd. Camila confirmed what Veronica said. She said Sophia is having financial difficulties and has been lying about it. She said she only comes to visit me when she needs something. I'm confused. This doesn't sound like the girl I know. September 5th. I called Sophia 3 times this week. She didn't answer any of them. Maybe they're right. My throat tightened. I remembered those calls. It was the week I worked double shifts because a coworker had gotten sick. My phone stayed in my work locker, and when I finally saw the missed calls, it was too late. I called back the next day, but he didn't answer. I thought it was just bad luck, that our schedules simply hadn't aligned. But he had interpreted it as confirmation of the lies. I kept reading, each entry like a stab wound. September 18th. Fernando said he saw Sophia at an expensive restaurant with an older man. He said she seemed to be asking him for money. I don't want to believe it. But the evidence is piling up. I knew exactly which dinner that was. It was with my former boss, discussing a possible promotion that never happened. At an Outback. Hardly an expensive restaurant. The entries became shorter, colder, more distant. And then came the last one. October 12th. 3 weeks before he died. I changed the will today. It was difficult. More difficult than I thought. But they were right. I was being manipulated. Sophia only got close to me out of self-interest. I wrote a message for her. Maybe one day she'll understand that actions have consequences. That she disappointed me deeply. I closed the notebook, hands shaking so much I almost dropped it. They had done this. Systematically. Planting seeds of doubt. Twisting innocent coincidences into evidence of betrayal. Turning my grandfather against me, brick by brick, until he no longer recognized me. And I had proof now. Proof in his own words. But before I could process everything, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened. It was my mother. She looked at me, then at the notebook in my hand, and her expression changed to something between fear and resignation. "Sophia," she whispered. "What are you doing?" I held up the notebook. Finding the truth. She closed the door behind her, approaching slowly. "Please tell me you're not going to do anything stupid with this." Stupid. I let out a humorless laugh. They destroyed my relationship with him. They made him die thinking I was a liar, a gold digger. And you think I'm going to do something stupid? I know, she said, tears in her eyes. I know. And I'm sorry. But if you start a war with this. They started the war, Mom. I'm just defending myself. My mother took a deep breath. There's more, she said quietly. More what? In that box. There are more things. Things you need to know. I looked back at the box on the desk. Like what? Recordings, she said. He recorded conversations sometimes. When he got older, he started doing this so he wouldn't forget important things. I know because he told me once. My heart raced. Recordings of what? Of everything. Of conversations with the family. Of meetings about the will. Even of Veronica and Camila's visits. I went back to the box immediately. I searched deeper. And there, at the bottom, wrapped in a soft cloth, were 3 small digital recorders. I picked one up, turned it on, and pressed play. Grandpa's voice filled the room. And then another voice. Familiar. Too sweet. Poisonous. Camila's voice. And she was saying exactly what I feared she was. I pressed play and Grandpa's voice filled the room, followed by Camila's sugary voice. Grandpa, I really didn't want to have to tell you this, but Sophia has been saying things. What kind of things? Grandpa's voice sounded tired, weaker than I remembered. She told Aunt Veronica that she's waiting for you, well, you know, that when you're gone, she'll finally be able to pay off her debts. That she's counting on the inheritance. There was a long silence. Then his voice, almost inaudible. Sophia said that? I know it hurts to hear, Grandpa. We didn't want to believe it either. But Veronica heard it. And Uncle Fernando saw her Googling about how long it takes to process wills on her phone while she was here visiting you. More lies. Each word a carefully placed dagger. I just think, Camila continued, that you should protect what you built. Protect the real family. The people who have always been here, not those who show up when it's convenient. I paused the recording, feeling bile rise in my throat. I looked at my mother, who had tears silently streaming down her face. Is there more? I asked, my voice coming out as a hoarse whisper. She nodded. There are 3 recorders. He started to suspect at the end. I think some part of him knew he was being manipulated. So he started recording everything. I picked up the second recorder. This time it was Veronica's voice, equally sweet, equally lethal. Dad, you need to think clearly about this. Sophia isn't that little girl who used to sit on your lap anymore. She's grown up. Changed. I saw her bills. She owes almost $50,000 in credit cards. Do you think it's a coincidence she started visiting more when you got sick? But she was always a good girl, Grandpa's voice protested weakly. Was. Past tense. People change, Dad. And it hurts to say this, but sometimes the people we love disappoint us. I turned it off. I couldn't listen anymore. My mother was sitting on the edge of Grandpa's bed now, face buried in her hands. Did you know about this? I asked. No, she sobbed. Not about these recordings. But I knew they were talking to him. I thought they were genuine concerns. I only realized too late that it was an orchestrated campaign. And you did nothing. I tried. She raised her head, eyes red. I tried to tell him you were working hard. That's why you didn't always answer. But they were 2-3 voices against mine. And he was so confused in those last months. The medications, the illness. He didn't know who to trust anymore. I picked up the third recorder. This one was different. The date was more recent. 3 days before he died. I took a deep breath and pressed play. Grandpa's voice was clear this time, more lucid than in the other recordings. This is a message for Sophia, in case she ever hears this. Daughter, if you're listening, it's because I'm gone and you found these recordings. And if you found them, then you're looking for answers. My breath caught. I made a terrible mistake. I let people I thought I loved convince me of things about you that my heart knew weren't true. I changed my will. I wrote those cruel words. And now, lying here in this bed, knowing I don't have much time left, I realize the truth. He coughed, a weak, wet sound. You never disappointed me, Sophia. I disappointed you. But I'm too old, too sick, and too proud to change everything now. The lawyer has already left. The papers are signed. And I don't have the strength to fight them again. Tears started streaming down my face. But I leave these recordings here, in this box, in the only place I know you'll look. Because you were always curious. You always wanted to understand things. You always dug deep. He laughed lightly, an almost affectionate sound. Use this as you see fit, my dear. Not to avenge me. I'm beyond that now. But to protect yourself. So you know the truth. And so that, if you choose, you can show others who really poisoned this well. There was a long pause. I've loved you since the day you were born. And I'll love you until my last breath. Forgive me for not being strong enough to defend you. You deserved more. You deserved better. The recording ended with a soft click. I stood there, holding that small device as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. It was his forgiveness. It was his truth. It was proof that I hadn't imagined the love between us. My mother was crying openly now. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wiped my tears and looked at her. Will you help me? She blinked, confused. Help with what? With what comes next? It took me 3 days to prepare. It wasn't a loud or dramatic preparation. It was methodical. Surgical. Exactly the way Grandpa would have done it. First, I digitized everything. Every page of the diary. Every recording. I made copies in multiple clouds, saved them on 4 different flash drives. I sent one to Mason, my best friend, with instructions to open it only if something happened to me. Paranoia? Maybe. But I wasn't taking chances. Second, I found a lawyer. Dr. Beatriz Cardoso, specialist in succession law. I showed her everything. The diary, the recordings, the dates, the contradictions. She leaned forward, interested. This is gold, Sophia. We have clear evidence of elderly manipulation, indirect coercion, and most importantly, we have his own voice admitting he was deceived. We can contest the will. How long does it take? Months. Maybe a year. And it's going to be ugly. Your family will fight. Let them fight, I replied. Third, I assembled a strategy. It wasn't just going to be about the will. It was going to be about exposing everything. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every moment they chose greed over love. But I would be smart. I wasn't just going to scream into the wind. I was going to use their own weapons against them. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. A distant cousin was organizing a big family dinner to celebrate unity after Grandpa's loss. All the Martins would be there. More than 40 people. Our SVP confirmed. On the night of the dinner, I arrived early. Simple black dress, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed, I'm about to detonate your lives. I greeted people politely. I accepted awkward hugs. I smiled when necessary. And I waited. Dinner was served in a rented hall, long tables decorated with white flowers and candles. Very elegant. Very Martin's family. After dessert, my cousin Andre stood up to make a toast. He talked about unity, about honoring Grandpa's legacy, about family above all. When he finished, I raised my hand. Can I say a few words? Andre looked surprised but nodded. Of course, Sophia. I stood up, glass in hand, and looked around the room. All heads turned to me. Camila, Veronica, Fernando, all staring at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to caution. I want to thank you for tonight, I began, voice calm. It's comforting to see everyone gathered, celebrating Grandpa Enrique's memory. Some nods of agreement. But before we toast to unity, I think it's important that we're all operating with the same truth. Because truth, as Grandpa used to say, is the foundation of any strong family. I saw Veronica stiffen in her chair. Many of you know that when Grandpa passed away, he left me something. It wasn't money. It wasn't property. It was a message. I took the envelope from my pocket. Yes, I still carried it and held it up. 3 words. You disappointed me. Murmurs through the room. Some looked genuinely shocked. For a year, I carried those words like a sentence. I questioned everything. My relationship with him. My memory. My own sanity. I paused. But then I discovered something interesting. I took my phone from my pocket and connected it to the sound system that Andre had set up to play background music. Grandpa left other things too. Things that some people in this room would very much like to have remained hidden. Camila went pale. Sophia, what are you doing? Showing the truth, I replied simply. I pressed play. Grandpa's voice filled the hall. And then Camila's voice, sweet as poisoned honey, saying how I was waiting for him to die to get the inheritance. The silence was absolute. You could hear silverware being gently placed on tables, held breaths, the slight hum of the air conditioning. I let the recording play. Then I put on the second one. Veronica's voice, planting doubts, distorting facts, building an entire narrative of lies. Turn that off, Veronica stood up abruptly. Turn it off now. Why? I asked calmly. These are your words. Your voices. Don't you want everyone to know what you said? You have no right. I have every right. My voice came out louder now, echoing through the room. Because you didn't just lie. You manipulated a sick, elderly man. You turned him against his own granddaughter. You made him die believing lies. I played the last recording. Grandpa's voice, clear and lucid, admitting the mistake, asking for forgiveness, explaining that he had been manipulated. When it finished, the silence was deafening. I looked at Camila. Tears were streaming down her face, but not from sadness, from anger, from the shame of being exposed. You don't know anything, she spat. You weren't here. You didn't see how much he changed. How he was systematically poisoned against me by people he trusted. I finished. You're right. I didn't see. Because I was working 3 jobs to survive while you were here, planning how to divide the spoils before he even died. Veronica was standing now, too. This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything. Am I? I took the flash drive from my pocket and placed it on the table. Here's everything. Every recording. Every diary entry. Dates. Contexts. Everything documented in his voice, in his handwriting. Anyone who wants to can listen. Can read. Can draw their own conclusions. My mother was sitting in silence, tears streaming, but she nodded slightly at me. Silent support. And tomorrow. I continued. I'm filing a formal challenge to the will. My lawyer has already reviewed everything. We have solid legal grounds to claim manipulation of an incapacitated elderly person. You won't get anything. Fernando finally spoke, voice trembling. Maybe not, I agreed. Maybe the judge will decide that even manipulated, the will is valid. Maybe I'll lose. But you know what I won't lose. I looked around the room, at each shocked face, each uncomfortable expression. The truth. Because now everyone here knows. Everyone in this room has heard. And you, I pointed at Camila, Veronica, and Fernando. You'll carry this for the rest of your lives. Every time you look in the mirror, you'll remember that you destroyed the last year of a good man's life with lies. I grabbed my purse. Enjoy the dinner. Enjoy the farm. Enjoy everything you got with your lies. Because even if it stays with you legally, it'll never really be yours. It'll always taste like him knowing the truth in the end. Always. I started to leave. Sophia, wait. It was my cousin Anna's voice, Fernando's daughter. She had been quiet the whole dinner. I didn't know, she said, voice breaking. I swear I didn't know any of this. I looked at her. She was young, 19 years old, had always been closer to me than the others. I know, Anna. You don't have to carry their guilt. Others started to speak. Distant aunts and uncles. Second cousins. People who weren't involved, who didn't know, who were as horrified as I was. And that's when I realized I had done more than expose 3 people. I had cracked the entire family in half. In the following days, chaos ensued. Some family members called to apologize. Others sent messages of support. Anna came to visit me personally, crying, saying she always felt something was wrong but was afraid to question her parents. Dr. Beatriz filed the formal challenge. The response came quickly, Veronica's lawyers contesting everything, calling the recordings taken out of context and distorted interpretations of innocent conversations. But the real victory didn't come from the courts. It came 3 weeks later in the form of a phone call. It was Dr. Campos, the lawyer who had read the original will. Sophia, he said, voice heavy. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. What? After your grandfather signed the will amendment, he called me. 2 days before he died. He said he had made a mistake. That he wanted to change everything back. I said I would need to schedule a formal meeting, that I was too busy that week. I told him to call me on Monday. He paused. He died on Sunday. I never got the chance to correct it. And I've been carrying this guilt ever since. My heart tightened. Why are you telling me this now? Because after hearing those recordings, after seeing what you presented, I spoke with my partners. We reviewed our procedures. And we found something. A note I had made from his call, documenting that he wanted to make changes. It's not a valid will, but it's evidence of intent. And does that help? It can. Especially combined with the recordings and the diary. It shows a clear pattern, manipulation followed by regret. A judge might consider that. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom. On one side, me and Dr. Beatriz. On the other, Veronica, Camila, and their expensive lawyers. The judge was an older woman, with thin glasses and an unreadable expression. She had reviewed everything, the recordings, the diary, Dr. Campos's testimony, the dates, the inconsistencies. This is an unusual case, she began. We rarely see this level of documentation in cases of alleged elderly manipulation. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. After extensively reviewing all the evidence presented, including recordings of the deceased himself admitting to being deceived, the corroborating testimony of the executing attorney, and the clear, documented pattern of false information being provided to the testator during his period of vulnerability. She paused, looking directly at Veronica. I determined that the amendments to Enrique Martin's will made in the last 6 months of his life be nullified due to undue influence and coercion. I could barely breathe. The will reverts to the previous version, dated March 2 years ago, where the distribution of assets was significantly more balanced and included substantial provisions for Miss Sophia Martins. Veronica stood up abruptly. This is absurd. You can't. I can and I have, the judge cut coldly. And I strongly suggest that you consider your next words carefully, or you'll have more legal issues to worry about beyond this one. It was over. I left that courtroom not with a sense of triumphant victory, but with something deeper. Peace. The redistribution of assets meant I received exactly what Grandpa had originally planned: a third of the farm, a portion of the shares, and some specific personal items he had set aside for me years ago. But the money, the property, none of it mattered as much as the last thing I found when I finally had legal access to his things. At the bottom of that wooden box, under all the recordings and papers, there was a final envelope. Addressed to me. Not opened at the will reading because it was hidden. Inside was a letter. The last one he wrote. My dear Sophia, if you're reading this, then you found the truth. You dug, as I always knew you would, because you're my granddaughter. Stubborn. Curious. Incapable of leaving mysteries unsolved. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to resist them. Sorry I let poison enter where there should only have been love. But more than that, I'm sorry I doubted you, even for a moment. You were the best part of my last years. Those mornings on the porch, those conversations about nothing and everything, those moments of comfortable silence, that's when I felt most alive. Most myself. Don't waste energy hating those who deceived me. They'll carry their own weight of it. You, my dear, you live. Live fully. Live honestly. Live the way you've always lived, with an open heart and a clear conscience. And when you sit on that farm porch, because it's yours now, as it always should have been, have a coffee for me. And know that wherever I am, I'm still proud of you. Forever yours. Grandpa Enrique. 6 months later, I sat on the farm porch on a cool Saturday morning with a cup of coffee in my hands. The same porch where we spent so many mornings together. I renovated the place. Not much. I kept his essence, but enough to feel like mine too. The new hammock swayed gently between the trees. The garden I planted was beginning to bloom. My mother came to visit me regularly now. We were rebuilding, slowly. She had distanced herself from Veronica and the others. I choose you, is what she said. This time I choose you. Anna, my cousin, was living with me. She had distanced herself from her father after everything that happened. She was studying veterinary medicine and helped take care of the animals I started rescuing on the property. As for Veronica, Camila, and Fernando, they kept their reduced portions. They kept the public shame. They kept knowing that the whole family knew what they did. Camila and her fiancé broke up. Apparently, he didn't want to be associated with the scandal. Veronica lost several longtime friendships. Fernando doesn't even look me in the eye anymore at the rare family events we still attend simultaneously. But I don't feel triumph at their suffering. Just a distant sadness. Sadness for what could have been. For the family we could have had if they hadn't chosen greed over love. I raised my cup toward the horizon, where the sun was rising in shades of pink and gold. Here's to you, Grandpa, I said quietly. Coffee for you. For us. For everything you taught me, especially in the things you didn't say directly. A gentle breeze passed, swaying the trees, almost like a response. Because Grandpa taught me to dig deep. To question. Not to accept half-told stories. And maybe without knowing it, he left me the greatest gift of all, not in the will, but in those hidden recordings. In the documented truth. In the permission to fight. You disappointed me, the card said. But the complete truth was, you disappointed me. Because I let them convince me of that. And I'm wrong. Forgive me. And I forgive. I forgive the man who loved me but was manipulated in his weakest moments. I forgive my mother for not fighting harder when she should have. But those who planted the lies? Those who purposely destroyed something precious for money? They'll have to learn to live with what they did. With everyone knowing what they did. And me? I'll live here on this farm that's now my home, surrounded by new memories, new mornings, new beginnings. Because in the end, that was my true inheritance. Not the property or the money. It was the lesson that truth, no matter how long it takes to find, is always worth digging for. And that true love, even when tested, even when obscured by lies, can still leave footprints deep enough to follow back home. I finished my coffee, stood up, and went inside to start the day. The farm had horses to feed, a garden to water, a life to live, and somewhere I knew Grandpa was smiling. Because his stubborn, curious granddaughter, incapable of leaving mysteries unsolved, had finally found her way back to where she always belonged. Home. If this story touched you in any way, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming injustice. Your comments and support make all the difference for other people who might be going through similar situations. Until the next story.